Welcome to the Priority Zero podcast. Stories of service.
Welcome to the Priority Zero podcast. Today with me, I'm lucky enough to have Mr. Stephen Rodgers, former trooper in the Australian Special Air Service Regiment and a Vietnam veteran. So welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very, very excited to have you today. And you've got a lot of stories. We had a few discussions before recording, so I'm pretty keen to share them. So let's get started. What inspired you to join the Australian Defence Force?
That is an interesting thought. I was inspired by some of the mentors I had as a teenager. When I left school when I was 14, and I worked in Adelaide and various functions, and I had a boss who had spent time in the military during the Second World War, and the French polisher was also an ex-soldier, and they told me many stories about being a soldier, what it was like being a soldier, and it sounded adventurous, sounded great. Yeah.
So what year was this when you first decided to join the Australian Army?
When did I decide to join? I joined in 67, so I think 66 was when I first decided to join. And I went along to the recruiting office, and I had long hair at the time. It was the fashion, of course, being young. I was 18 to the recruiting office, and I said to the sergeant, I said, if I join, will I have to have my hair cut like you? And he looked at me and he said, shorter. And I thought, okay. So I went away, and I didn't go back for a year. So it was a year later that I actually joined.
Wow.
When I was 19, and so I delayed. Having long hair was an important thing for me at that time. Yeah.
Fair enough. So what was it like going to, I assume, Kapuka's where you first started?
Yes. Yeah.
So travel in those days by bus?
Train. We went. Actually, when we left Adelaide by train to Melbourne first, and spent a week there for dental work. Essentially, a lot of blokes had bad teeth back in those days, and I didn't, so for me it was a week off, and pretty much. And then we went to Kapuka also I think it was by train, but it might have been by bus, but I don't remember, to be honest.
Yeah. So what was it like when you did you have the long hair when you went to Kapuka, or did you shave it beforehand?
No, beforehand, yeah.
What was life like at the recruit course at Kapuka?
It was, for me, it was quite challenging, because I think one must appreciate that at that time, prior to that, I had absolutely no military experience whatsoever. I'd never wore a pair of boots, never carried a pack. I fired a rifle, I had a 22, and used to hunt rabbits in the Adelaide Hills when I was a teenager. But apart from that, I had absolutely I don't think I'd ever read a map. I mean, I was pretty unknowledgeable of all that sort of stuff. So it was a huge learning curve for me.
Can you tell me about what you signed up as? What did you go to the recruiting office and have a chat with them, and did you decide to go infantry? Was there other options for you?
At that time, I don't recall there ever being options on enlistment.
Oh, wow.
You didn't really have much choice. You went, and it was in recruit training that you had the option of this, as I remember it. Yeah.
Yep.
In recruit training, that you had the option of requests, but at the end of the day, they would put you where they thought that that you were best suited. I requested infantry, and I got infantry, and you had to be a reasonably good soldier to get infantry, so I was happy with that. Where
was your first posting? So you would have done, I'm assuming, 2-3 months or so at Kapuka?
10 weeks. It was a 10-week program.
10-week program. And from there, where did you get posted?
Went to infantry training near Sydney, a place called Ingleburn. And that was where we did, I forget how long the course was. It seemed like a long time. I think it was probably about 3 months. And that was infantry training.
Perfect. So you do your basic soldering at Kapuka, and then from there, went to Ingleburn, where you did your specific training to be an infantry soldier. So
correct. Yeah.
Shooting rifles, you were shooting SLRs back in those days, is that right?
SLRs, yeah, and using the other, throwing grenades and all the other sort of machine gun, and also quite a lengthy bush exercise. As I remember, it was the longest exercise I've ever done in my military career, actually. It was, or in my life, really, 5 weeks. I'm pretty sure it was 5-week exercise, So
that's a long time.
It was a long time to be in the bush, basically, as an infantry patrol.
Especially, did you eat in rat packs back in those days?
Yeah.
What were they like?
Back in those days, for that particular patrol, I think we were using mostly the 10-man pack, which was cooked up in bulk. We were operating as a platoon and doing those type of manoeuvres, so it wasn't like the 24-hour pack that we used later on.
Once you finish your training, your infantry training, how did that make you feel? Was it a very proud moment for you?
Oh, yes, it was. It was a great sense of achievement.
And where to after that?
Well, nowhere actually, because I was held over at Ingleburn in what was called reinforcement wing. Some blokes went off to battalions, but they held me into reinforcement wing, possibly because I guess I was a reasonably good soldier, and some of us were held over with the intention of being sent to Vietnam directly when they needed people, basically.
Oh, wow.
To take the place of people that were sick or wounded or whatever, for whatever reason, came back home.
What had you heard about Vietnam at that point in your soldiering career? Because obviously you would have heard about it going on as a civilian.
Mm-hmm.
What did you hear from the military side of things once you were in?
To be honest, I don't really remember. I don't think I knew a lot about Vietnam, to be honest.
I suppose there was no, like now there's no social media. We weren't as connected as we are now.
Correct,
so there wouldn't have been as much information out. So you'd be relying on, the news at night really and newspapers.
Well, to be honest, at that stage of my life, I was 19. And I don't think I read the newspaper at all, and I never watched the news. So I didn't watch much TV. So I think I was pretty ignorant, to be honest, to be fair, And the stories I heard about Vietnam were basically the war-y stories that were told by the blokes that had been, that type of thing.
How did that make you feel? Were you excited to hopefully be deployed there at one stage?
I don't think I was excited, but I was looking forward to it.
Perfect. And how long did you spend in this Rio battalion?
Reinforcement wing.
Yep, sorry, reinforcement wing.
I don't remember. Isn't that amazing? It was a long time ago. We're talking about more than 50 years ago. Yeah, but it seemed like quite a number of weeks. No, we did other training while we were there, while we were in reinforcement wing, and it was during that period that I first saw blokes from the SAS. There were some blokes wandering through the barracks or to the grounds, wearing berets, and I asked somebody else, who are those guys? And they said, that's the selection team come to choose people to come across, to go across to Perth to take part in a selection for the SAS. And I had no idea. I honestly had no idea what the SAS was about.
Hadn't heard about them at that stage?
No. Sounds silly, doesn't it? But that was the case, yeah. And so I applied, and I was recommended, and I went for an interview with these guys, and then I forgot about it. And then I got a couple of weeks later, I got told that I was selected to go across to Perth to do a selection cadre.
How'd that make you feel?
I don't remember how I felt. It's interesting trying to recall feelings that long ago. I'd just be guessing, to be honest. I'd just be saying, how do I think I would have felt? But the reality is I don't remember how I felt, to be honest. It was,
Because a lot of guys, that's their dream. They grow up being young, knowing about special forces these days, and the 1st and 2nd Commander Regiment, the Special Operation Engineers, the SAS, and that that's what they strive to do. But like you said, someone like you had no idea who those guys were. You decided to join the army. You came across them. It's a very different path than what I guess it is these days.
It is, and I think it's part of it reflects on my lack of maturity at the time, of course, and my lack of experience and lack of caring. I was just going with the flow, really. I wasn't. It wasn't a great ambition of mine, let's do it. Yeah.
So let's talk about the Carter course, as they call it. I believe now it's 21 days. I believe it's about similar for you.
It was similar. Yeah.
Yep. What was it? Can you tell me about some experiences you had in the Carter course? What was it like?
Well, I could perhaps mention here that I did 2 Carters, because the first Carter, I wouldn't say that I failed it because I was selected to stay in the regiment, but as a driver, and I had to do a second Carter about 6 months later in order to get into a Sabre squadron, and which was 1 squadron. Now the Carter, when I say I didn't fail anything. I passed everything in the course, but at the end of the course they said they deemed me as being unsuitable at that time, and there could be many factors for that. They never really told you why, but it was a 3-week course consisting of a week at, I think the sequence was a week at Swanbourne, a week at Rottnest, and a week at Collie. From memory, the first part was learning everything that they thought you needed to know in order to do the rest, basically, and then the week on Rottnest Island was a lot of physical stuff, hard stuff, sand dunes, running through sand dunes, and trying to see if you'd give up, basically. And then the final week was in Collie in Western Australia, so south of Perth, patrolling and learning or demonstrating your ability to be able to patrol effectively, to navigate in the bush and to take turns at being patrol commander and all that sort of stuff.
Is there any stories that you can tell me that happened on selection?
Oh.
I know there was a map story that we were talking about, a navigation.
Yes, yes, there was a map story. I'm glad you jogged my memory for that one. Yes, and it's probably one of the reasons that I was not successful. Because I wasn't particularly good at navigating in the bush, and I think that was a factor. I remember we came to I was patrol commander. It's my turn to be patrol commander, and we came to a creek at the foot of a hill, and I was going to stop there and fill up the water bottles, tell the blokes to fill up the water bottles. There was 5 of us in the patrol. And the sergeant that was assessing us, he said to me, where do you think you are? And I showed him on the map where I thought we were. And he said, well, if you're here, he said, well, so what are you going to do now? And I said, I'll fill up our water bottles. And he said, well, why are you going to do that? He said, there's if you're there, then the other side of the hill, there's another creek. He said, well, why are you going to carry your water all the way over the hill? And I thought, well, that's true, so I told them, don't fill up your water bottles here, we'll fill it up the other side. Of course, I was in the wrong place. There was no creek the other side of the hill. I had incorrectly read the map, and as a result, we ran out of water as a patrol. And we were without water for the best part of 24 hours, and it was summer too. So I was not popular. I was not a popular patrol commander at that particular time. Yeah.
How many in your patrol around that time when you were running that course?
5. There was always we always in our training operation 5-man patrols.
Yep. So patrol commander and then 4 others.
4 others, that's right.
Yep.
And we took it in turns to be the patrol commander in our training.
Perfect. Is there any other courses or things, you can talk about that happened in your selection?
Well, the basic selection was the Carter, and that was a 3-week long program. But after that, you had to do, of course, the para course, which you did the para course before you got your beret, and then there were other courses that one did, including a lengthy patrol course before one eventually went to Vietnam. And plus we were all expected to do it, preferably 2 courses for skills, for example, a medic, a radio operator, explosives, there was a range of things that you're and the idea being that in every patrol that there would be at least 2 members, that every member had at least 2 skills. That was the goal. Yeah. In case somebody got hurt, and there was somebody else who could pick up that job.
Absolutely. So let's talk about you getting through the first Carter all the way to the end. You said you didn't get selected, but you got accepted into the unit as a driver.
Yes, I was selected. I was selected in the sense that I could stay, but as a driver, and the offer was that if I wanted to go for, I could do another kata. That was the offer right from the beginning. That I could do another kata later on. Yeah. So, so I did. My guess, I think, is about 6 months as a driver in the regiment before I did a second kata, and that was. I was successful with that one.
That would have been beneficial because you got to be in the unit, see how the unit works, meet the people, see how they operate.
It was. In fact, I think I benefited greatly from doing it that way. Apart from the fact that I was, as you can gather from this interview, that I was very immature at the time too, very inexperienced. So the extra time in the regiment didn't do me any harm. And plus I got to meet a much wider range of blokes than if I had gone straight to 3 Squadron, which is where I would have gone, and then gone to Vietnam with 3 Squadron. I got to know not just the people that I did the kata with that went to 3 Squadron, but also I got to know the people in Base Squadron very well. And then when I went to 1 Squadron, I got to know everybody in 1 Squadron. So, and it was, I think it was very good. And and that 6 months I spent as a driver, I really quite enjoyed. I got lots of trips out of that, and got lots of, it was great. I enjoyed it.
You also got some opportunities in Vietnam with that call, but we'll get to that when we get to the Vietnam stage.
Mustn't forget that, because I mean, in fact, I may as well say it now. Actually,
because, go for it.
Because if you go sequential, you tend to forget things. Yeah. But one of the advantages of doing a driver course was because at that time, even if you had a civilian driver's license, you couldn't drive a military vehicle. So even officers weren't allowed to drive military vehicles without they needed a driver. And so when I was in Vietnam, because I had a military driver's license, I had lots of opportunities for trips that I wouldn't have had if I didn't have that driver's license, the military driver's license. And one of them that I used to really enjoy was I could go to almost every beach party when on Sundays when we were in base camp. We had the opportunity of going into Vung Tau to beach parties on a Sunday, and they needed drivers for the trucks to take the blokes in. And so I would nearly always get to go into these beach parties. So it really paid off. It was worthwhile.
Can you give us an inside scoop on what happened at these beach parties?
Sorry?
Can you give me some inside scoop on what happened at these beach parties?
Oh, they were basically, what would you say? They're basically a day at the beach, where often we would have a band or a singing group from Australia or a local group putting on a show. Lots of drinking, of course, which, of course, back in, we were, as a driver, you weren't supposed to drink that much, but there wasn't the same attitude as there is today towards drinking and driving. And I didn't drink that much anyway. I wasn't a big drinker, so that was never an issue.
Was there other nationalities, people from other countries there as well? Was there Americans?
No. This was essentially Australians.
Australians only?
Yeah. Occasionally we got American performers and that sort of thing.
Yep. All right. One second kata course. Mm-hmm. How did you find the second kata course compared to the first? Did they take you through the same kind of things?
Similar, although the culture of the kata course was different. The second kata had a mature warrant officer running it, whereas the first kata I did was a relatively immature second lieutenant that was running it. And so I think that the culture of the two were different, but the structure was the same. And, was it an advantage? I think no. Having done the first one, in fact, I was fitter when I did the first one because I'd come straight from recruit training, infantry training, and of course after doing 6 months as a driver, I was nowhere near as fit when I did the second one. And also, having not been successful the first one, you're under the cloud a bit, under being watched. So,
pressure.
Why didn't you pass the first time? So no, I don't think. Was it an advantage to be doing second time? I don't think so. But that's okay.
Okay. So once you finish selection, you don't go straight to a squadron. You got to do what's called reinforcement cycle or a Rio cycle, where you do.
No, after doing that, we do the para course.
Oh, you did the para course straight away?
Yeah. We go pretty much straight away to Williamtown, which is north of Sydney, and that's where we spent I think from memory it's 3 weeks, and we do 8 jumps to qualify as a parachutist.
Now, the interesting thing about this for you is the first 8 times you ever went in a plane is when you jumped out of them.
Yes, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. I'm sure that some of the blokes listening to it may have had the same experience, But we never talked about it, never thought about it, because back in those days the army sent us around by bus or train. It was always just cheaper. Air travel was expensive back then, So we tended not to be flown around the place, So when I went to Williamtown to do my para course, I'd never been in a plane before. And they were going to take us up for a what would you call it?
Like a familiarization?
A familiarization flight before, but they didn't, because the weather wasn't suitable. So the first time I went up, and the first 8 times I went up, I jumped out, and it was interesting. But we never talked about it. I don't know. It was not something that, but I'm sure I wasn't alone in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was static line jumps, is that
Static
right?
line jumps, yeah. We did our first 2 jumps from a caribou, which was relatively easy. You went out the back, so you walked down the ramp at the back and out the back. But then it was the next 6 was from a Hercules, which you had to actually jump out the side.
Yeah, and that's a little door that opens on the side.
Yeah, and you jump out. And it's interesting that, as I remember it, you didn't get pushed as you did later on. Once you were qualified, and they would help you out. They'd give you a good push to help you clear the plane. But when you're doing the para course, I don't remember being pushed. I think because you could still not jump if you didn't want to. You could.
Oh, well, so you could pull out of the course there and then.
Yeah. There was always, and nobody did, but that was an option. Because once you were qualified, you weren't allowed to refuse to jump. It was always, when you went to parachute, it was always read to you the orders that you are required to jump, and if you don't jump, you will be charged. This is one of the comes back in my memory, that this was an interesting thing. But when you were in training, of course, if you change your mind, you could, but nobody did.
Well, that's really interesting. What sort of training did you do before you did the actual real jump?
The jumps that we did the practice we did was in a hangar. We're hanging from the ceiling and in straps, jumping off of benches, practicing rolls, jumping off at what they called a fan tower. They had a tower outside where you put the harness on and you jumped off, and the fan slowed you down as you came down. And so it was similar feeling to what it would be for me, coming down with a parachute, except it was so very noisy. The rattle of this fan tower used to rattle, and that was more scary than anything else.
Yeah, well, I've never parachuted in my life, but I've had friends that have done it, and they said it's quite loud when you jump out of the plane and you're going down. As soon as the chute is pulled or the chute comes out, if you're doing static, you kind of get that jolting feeling where your body feels like it's going down because the chute's going up. And that'd be the most scariest for them. And then once you're floating down, it's just quiet. That's what I've heard.
Quiet, yes. I remember the quiet, and I remember the tug as being gentle. I don't remember it being particularly harsh. I haven't done jump for a long, long time, of course. This is a long time ago. But certainly, it's quiet when you're coming down, yeah.
Amazing. I don't know if I've got it in me to jump out of the plane. All right, after you finish your parachute course for 3 weeks, that's when you went into that reinforcement cycle, is that right?
No, that's when I went to base squadron. Sorry, that's when I went to do the driving course.
Yep.
I went back to the regiment, and the driving course was done right next door. And it was a great course. It was 2 months long. It was a long driving course. It included, of course, I could already drive at the time. I had a license, but it was driving military vehicles and trucks, cross country, We did some really. I actually enjoyed that because it was the first time I'd done a bush exercise where you could take with you whatever you wanted, because you were driving a truck, So it was great, And that was a 2-month long course. Yeah.
From there, what other courses?
After that course, I then went straight to base squadron then as a driver, and that's where I was for about 6 months.
Yep. Once you were qualified and you had finished your second Rio cycle, your second selection course.
Yes. Yeah.
Where did you go from there? Was that when your Rio cycle started? Your SAS training?
Yes, I guess so. I went to one squadron, and then to be honest, I don't remember the exact detail, but we did a lot of training within the squadron. We did a whole range of different types of training, which included canoe stuff and as well as bush stuff, explosives, scuba diving.
Oh, scuba diving as well.
Wow. All sorts of stuff. Yeah, all sorts of stuff. A lot of stuff that we wouldn't need in Vietnam. Plus, I got sent then to do a medic course, which was over at Healesville in Victoria, and I did a radio operators course and various courses and training.
So after you had done those various courses, that's when you get beret qualified and you get presented to a beret.
No, go back. You got your beret after the para course.
Oh, you got your beret after.
Oh, yes, we got the beret. Back in those days, you got the beret after the para course.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm. So I had my beret before I did my second kata.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. At what point did you find out that your squadron was going to Vietnam?
Oh, we knew all along because there was the standard cycle. The SAS had three squadrons, one apart from base squadron, 1 squadron, 2 and 3, and they did a cycle. You'd have one in Vietnam, one being fitted out and I guess reorganized after Vietnam, and another one in training for Vietnam. And so when I went to one squadron, we knew that. I'm just trying to remember because the time frame eludes me a bit, but we were actually preparing for Vietnam, and it was known that's what happened. Yeah.
So pre-deployment training you did before you went, is that right?
Yes.
Well, let's talk about Vietnam. What year did you deploy to Vietnam? Do you remember?
1970, January 1970.
January 1970. Mm. What was it like when you first got into country?
What was what like?
What was it like first setting foot in Vietnam on an actual deployment?
Okay, when we flew commercial flight from Perth to Saigon, and then flew from Saigon. I'm pretty sure it was directly to Nui Dat, which is where the Australian base is, and 3 squadron were leaving, we were arriving. So 3 squadron was on the airstrip, as we got off, they got on.
And I heard someone gave you some words of wisdom as they were walking past you.
Correct. Yeah, and I'll mention you here, Rick, because this is something that sticks in my memory. A good mate of mine, Rick Gray. I saw him we sort of passed each other. I got off, he was getting on, and he said, "Steve, this is going to be the worst year of your life." And then he got on the plane.
Words of encouragement.
And I said, "Thank you very much, Rick. I really appreciate that." But I tell you, it wasn't the worst year of my life at all, But it was interesting welcome. Yeah.
So what was your overall mission when the SAS or your squadron went to Vietnam?
Well, the mission of just about every patrol that I went on was reconnaissance and harassment. That was the 2 functions, to find out what was going on, see what was happening. We were given a collection of good references, an area on the map to look around and to see what was there, and also to harass, which would most likely involve ambushing tracks that were being used and so forth.
Right, can you tell me about some experiences that you had during your patrols in Vietnam?
Yeah, we had a couple of interesting. I mean, we were taken in by helicopter most times, but occasionally we're taken in by other means, by APC on several occasions, even once by inflatable dinghy who came in from a ship and were dropped off on the beach, you know. But so our way of getting in was varied, but mostly helicopter. And there was one patrol that sticks in my memory as being a little bit different, a little bit unusual, and that was we discovered an enemy camp that had been built, a well-built camp, but not occupied. Not occupied. The impression we got that it had been built in preparation for a large group of people to move in. And so what we did, we on another patrol, we took a radio operator, a technician, an expert, into this camp and planted a radio in this camp that would, that the idea being that it would switch on when the camp was occupied by whoever occupied it, by the sound of their voices, you know. And that would then be transmitted. They would know it's occupied, and then it could be bombarded with artillery. Now, I have no idea what happened because there was never any follow-up information on that. But it was an interesting and different sort of patrol, doing that sort of thing, a specialist thing.
Yeah, because my initial thought, why didn't you just destroy the area? You know what I mean? Straight away. But I can see where you're coming from is, planting the radio, trying to gather that intelligence, and then destroying it once the enemy was occupying the area.
We wouldn't have
sense.
We wouldn't have destroyed it. It was a big camp and a five-man patrol, and it wasn't our job to do that sort of thing.
Because I suppose you want to remain undetected because, if you destroyed it, they know someone's in the area.
That's right. And they know that it's been picked up and probably build another one somewhere else. Yeah.
True.
But anyway, that wasn't our decision. So that was, the camp was found, and then the decision was made to do it this way.
Speaking of enemies, right? Was there any time during a patrol that you were doing where you had inadvertently come across enemies or they had come across you?
Oh, yes. The most common one was on infiltration. When we were dropped off a helicopter, we had a number of contacts, especially early in the year. From obviously the clearings were being watched by Viet Cong, and they would and that would create a problem for us getting in initially. Other times we would inadvertently you'd come across them when you're patrolling through the bush. You'd come across a camp or a clearing that's being used, And there was one occasion where we had a couple actually walk into our camp. One of our blokes, we were stopped having a break, and one of our blokes coughed, and next to him there were two guys, two Viet Cong, came crashing in through the scrub, most probably thinking that it was their camp and that they were taking a shortcut through the bush. It ended badly for them, but that sort of thing that could happen. It did happen.
Was there anything in terms of, I heard a lot about booby traps and things like that that was used by the Viet Cong during Vietnam. Is that anything you guys had come across? Rarely.
My patrol anyway, we rarely came across booby traps. We didn't use tracks. We always moved through the bush. And the only time we were likely to find any booby traps was when we were near a camp. I remember coming across one once that was I was tailing Charlie, and the rest of the patrol actually had walked across it. But fortunately, the trip wire it was an old one, and the trip wire was laying on the ground, so they could step over it.
So it wasn't torn. It wasn't
taut. Yeah, and it was a hand grenade that was tied to a tree, and of course the trip wire to the pin to another tree. The idea being that anybody walk through would likely trip it. Yeah. But we didn't trip it, and it was an old booby trap.
That's quite lucky.
Oh yeah, very lucky. Yeah.
How was moving through the jungle? That's obviously the jungle's going to be very thick. Was it very, very slow moving?
Look, we moved very slowly to be undetected. slow movement was part of our normal patrolling. And in some places it was thick, in some places it wasn't. So when it was open country, we tended to spread out a greater distance between us, each of us, closer together when in thick scrum. But yes, the terrain varied. Sometimes it involved crossing old paddy fields, for example, and you'd spread out to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, because that'll leave you very exposed as well.
In some cases, yeah. But we as much as possible use whatever cover's available.
Now you did tell me a story which I want to touch on, and that's going to go back to your Carter course, walking over the hill with the bottle of water. You told me there was an instance and a great story where you had run out of water on a patrol in Vietnam.
Yes, and unfortunately, this wasn't due to my own stupidity. It was somebody else. I got no idea who, but we were. It was dry season, and we were on patrol, and we were getting low on water, and we had arranged for our patrol commander had arranged for a helicopter, Huey, to come over and drop a bladder of water to us so that we could resupply. And the bladder was dropped, but it was the wrong type of bladder. Somebody else had stuffed up this time. It was a type of, there are bladders that are designed to be dropped from helicopters that have got multiple layers. This wasn't one of those, and it burst. And so the bladder burst, and the helicopter, I remember the chopper flew around, saw what had happened, and tossed his one water bottle to us. And then, of course, we had to clear away from that area because there'd been chopper activity. We couldn't hang around, So we headed off, and we had no water. And that night we camped without water, and it wasn't until about the middle of the next day or early afternoon that we got picked up. So it was nearly 24 hours without water there too, which was very, very unpleasant. Yeah.
Jesus, and you went hungry for a bit. So what?
Well, this is where my own stupidity cuts in. Actually,
improvise, adapt, and overcome, isn't it? That's what we'll call it.
Our food was all we only carried dehydrated stuff with us, and we didn't have any water. You only had dehydrated rations. So when it came time to settle down for the night, I thought I would try hydrating my dehydrated ration pack with rum. I had a small amount of rum in my pack, and it wasn't a good idea. It made me so thirsty, and that night all I could do was lie there and fantasize about water. And I certainly learned from that experience that you always have water, always have extra water. I've never run out of water since, and I've always carried water wherever I go. My car has always got at least 10 litres of water in it. even driving around suburbia, having those two very different experiences of being without water for 24 hours is a wake-up call.
Oh, absolutely. Now I guess that's something that sticks with you for life.
Yeah.
Did any of your other members of the patrol know you did that?
Oh yes, it was a joke.
What did they think about your idea?
Oh, they didn't think it was a very good one. No.
Now we discussed before about being inadvertently found by the enemy, but did that ever happen with a civilian?
Not quite, but similar. I guess there was one instance where we were patrolling in a civilian access area during the day. During the day it was a civilian access area, but at night time they weren't supposed to be there. And at night time we would move into an ambush site to ambush a track, because it was known that the villagers, either the villagers were taking stuff out to the Viet Cong, or the Viet Cong were going into the village to get supplies at night time. And so our role was to hide from the civilians during the day and to ambush the track at night time. So we spent our day hiding from civilians usually in bamboo, thick bamboo, cut our way in and sleep away the day, and then move into the ambush site. And on this occasion, we were in the process of moving into the ambush site. It was after curfew, so there should have been no civilians around. And as we're moving in, I saw somebody walking down the track in front of us, and I put my rifle on the person. It looked like a Viet Cong with one of those sort of peaked hats and a rifle over his shoulder, which they used to carry the rifle that way. And so I had him lined up, and I thought I'll just wait till I got a better look. And then he came into a bit of an opening, and I could see that it was an old farmer with a hoe over his shoulder. And he'll never know how close he was to getting shot that day, but he didn't see us, of course. But that was one of those situations where it could easily have happened that I could have accidentally killed a civilian. But fortunately I didn't. Fortunately for him, and fortunately for me, as my own psychology would have suffered, I think, from
absolutely,
if that had happened. Yeah.
And how's the saying go? It's not always about the shots that you take; it's also about the shots that you don't take as well.
Well, correct. Yeah.
What were the weapon system that the enemy was carrying? What rifles did they use?
AK-47 was the rifle of choice.
Weapon of choice for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear a lot about Agent Orange that they used over there, and that was to deforest. Is that right?
Correct. It was defoliate the jungle so that it made it more difficult for the Viet Cong to move through the area undetected, more easily seen from the air, and that sort of thing. It also made it more difficult for us to move to, because we're in an area that had been defoliated with Agent Orange. You tend to get a lot of secondary growth, and the secondary growth is much more difficult to move through than virgin jungle, So it did complicate our movements as well.
Was there a situation where you were flying, because you flew in the Hueys, is that right, in the little helicopters?
Yeah.
Where you were shot at, where you were flying through, or flying to an area for a mission?
Not when we're flying in, no, but when we were, I guess you could say, escaping from a contact. I don't think we actually shot at while we were in the helicopter, but shot at as we were getting back to the helicopter. We would have, but the gunships would come in. So the choppers, when we were dropped off or picked up, there were the choppers that we rode in, and there were a couple of gunships, we call gunships, that there were helicopters that had heavy machine guns and that sort of stuff, and they would suppress enemy fire whilst we were getting onto the helicopter or getting off, if there was a enemy around.
I know it's been a long time.
Mm.
Do you remember what it was like being shot at for the first time? Because a lot of people that, a lot of books that I've read about, guys in Afghanistan, they describe it as almost like a drug, like an adrenaline hit. Did you ever remember? I know it's been a while. Did you ever feel anything like that?
I don't remember. I remember a strong urge to get down.
Yep.
And to keep
Get low.
I remember that. It's but I don't remember. I can honestly say I don't remember that sort of thing.
Do you remember when your first gunfight was?
I think the first time we were shot at was probably on our first, from memory, from our first infiltration. For our first, when we were dropped off on our first patrol, because I've got a feeling, once again, memory is very selective here. But from memory, our first 2 or 3 patrols were aborted because we had contacts on arrival. That was, and it was at that time it was our strategy to abort the mission if we had contact on arrival, basically, on being dropped off. But later on, we did change our strategy a bit, and we formed what you could call cowboy patrols. Where a patrol was escorted in by maybe 10 others. So there'd be, instead of 5 men being dropped off in the middle of nowhere, there'd be 15 men dropped off, and so if you had a contact going in, then then you would just stay and basically do what's needed to stay in, and then the other 10 would be evacuated the same day.
So is that to form sort of like a distraction for the enemy, so they think
Correct.
Everyone's left?
Correct.
Because I suppose if you guys are flying in by Huey, there's a lot of noise involved in that.
Correct.
And if you guys are seen, that's your element of surprise gone, because your job is to stay undetected.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I suppose using that, like you said, the cowboy patrol flying in, if you get into contact, you got you 5 slip away, the other 10 jump on Hueys. They think everyone's gone, but you're still there.
Yes, correct. And of course, when we were dropped off by helicopter, there was a number of helicopters that would you would have one helicopter up very high. I hope I'm not breaching the Secrecy Act or whatever it is, because I don't think it's secret these days. But we'd have a helicopter up high controlling, called Albatross Leader, and you'd have a number of helicopters. I think from memory about 4, maybe 3 or 4, that would fly over the jungle, and the helicopter that we were on, if there's only 5 men being dropped off, one helicopter, and it would land. It would come in from memory first. It would land. We would jump out. The other helicopters would fly overhead and just keep going. There'd be the gunships, and then the helicopter we got off would then jump up and tag on behind the ones that had passed, so that anybody who was near the clearing would not realise that one of the helicopters had landed. They would just think that helicopters had flown over the clearing. One would hope, unless the clearing was actually being watched, in which case, that they would see that one helicopter's landed and blokes got out of it.
Wow. Did you have respect for your adversaries, for the Viet Cong? Like, was there like a soldier's respect there?
I don't remember thinking about that.
Yep, you're just there to do a job and...
Yeah. I guess there were times on the odd moment, I thought. But I thought if I was a Vietnamese, I probably would be a Viet Cong myself.
Yep.
That thought did cross my mind.
Yeah.
But I don't remember particularly feeling what you're suggesting there.
Yeah, like in Mark Donaldson's book, he won the Victoria Cross for Australia. I was reading his book and he talks about the use of IEDs and stuff in Afghanistan. And I'm paraphrasing here, I'm remembering the best I can, so don't quote me on it. But he was talking to another member of a patrol or group about, how, devastating they are and why they're fighting like this. And I believe what was discussed is, well, if this was happening in Australia and someone invaded us, we'd be doing exactly the same thing.
Of course.
We can inflict the maximum amount of damage on our enemies without putting ourselves at risk, and I think that's where it's perspective, right?
Yeah.
If we were on this end and it happened to us, what would we be doing to protect our country?
I think I certainly never hated the Viet Cong, as some blokes seemed to do. I don't know whether they really did, but I certainly never felt any hatred for them. Well, yeah.
And how long was your tour in Vietnam for?
12 months.
That's a long deployment, 12 months.
It was normal back then. That was the normal period of deployment. We had a 4-day what they called R&R in the middle, where there were a number of destinations you could go to for 4 days, and there was a certain amount of rest in country, where you had opportunities to go to Saigon or to Vung Tau. But yeah, a year was, and of course back then there was no social media like today. There was no telephone calls for that whole year. There was just letters.
And the letters were free back then, weren't they?
It was free. We had for us, and parcels too. We could send parcels or receive parcels, and people didn't have to pay. But letters, were free, and it's one of the few bonuses, I suppose. But certainly there was no, apart from letters, there was no communication, with people back home.
Yeah, it must have been difficult, but it must have been nice, a big morale boost to receive those letters and parcels from home.
And of course, demoralising when you didn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
As happened to some guys, their wife stops writing to them or something like this, or their girlfriend. Those letters were quite important for morale.
How did do you remember how you felt at the end of your tour coming home after your 12 months in Vietnam? Were you excited to come back to Australia, or did you feel that, you had more to contribute over there?
No, I was glad to be coming back. I was looking forward to seeing my girlfriend, looking forward to the freedom of being home and the leave that we were going to have, because we had a fair bit of leave when we came back. So I forget how long it was, but it seemed like quite a lot. Now I was looking forward to coming home. But it was a bit strange. for a while, getting mentally adjusted to. I suppose you could call it the trivia, of all the trivia things that are important when you're living in a sedentary sort of civilian type environment, and that are not important when you're in a war situation.
Yeah, it must have felt very, very different. I guess your perspective on life's change and how lucky we are to live where we are and have what we have. I think, that a lot of people take it for granted where we live.
They do. And we all do. I mean, even ourselves when we come back.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long to slip back into the normal way of thinking, of being. It doesn't stay with you. The strangeness, it becomes normal very quickly.
Yep.
Within a couple of months, you're as you were before you went away.
Yep. Are there any habits or routines that you learnt through your military time or your time in Vietnam that you still carry with you today, apart from the water? We know the water thing.
It's interesting, isn't it? The it's hard to know what is yourself and what is the result of what you learnt. I'm certainly a very careful person, and whether I was always careful, I don't know. But I'm very careful by nature, and also I very much practice what I call the 10 P's. When I was, they used to teach us 7 P's, but I've added a couple in my later years as I've aged. I've sort of added another couple, So the patience, perseverance, plus proper preparation and planning prevents piss poor performance.
That's a tongue twister, that one.
Yeah, that's the 10. We learned when I was in the regiment. They used to drum into us the what they call the 7 P's. They used to say, prior preparation and planning prevents piss poor performance.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
But I've varied it a bit, and added a couple. And I think that's for me that's been a. But whether that's part of my normal way, or to what extent it's been influenced by what I learnt in the regiment, maybe probably both. Nature, nurture. Yeah.
Now, this is not something we discuss, but I've been speaking to your daughter Sita.
Oh yes.
And she tells me that you're a little bit of a poet.
Yes, I have been known to write poetry. In fact, one of the things I did. She's not supposed to tell these things. This is my daughter here. Yeah, but when we were patrolling, we had a lot. I'll tell you one thing about the army about patrolling is a lot of sitting around waiting. There's a lot of times when you're just nothing to do. Well, they used to have a term called "hurry up and wait" in the army, and that was there was a lot of hurry up and wait. And one of the things, I had a little notebook, and I used to write poetry. When I had nothing to do, I sit down and write poetry, and I still do that from time to time. But nothing that comes to mind that I can quote right now.
Yeah, that's all right.
But I used to do that. Yes, I did.
But it's good to have some sort of a creative release to take your mind off things as well. I think it all helps.
Yeah. It's something that I enjoy. Yeah, I've always enjoyed reading poetry too.
Yep.
So, yeah. That's probably why one of the reasons they call me Brute. Yeah.
One of your nicknames. Let's get into that story, actually.
Oh, I haven't told you the story.
We missed that one.
Okay. Yeah. That's right, we missed that one. That's a good story, isn't it? Yeah, because during my time in the army, I have picked up the odd nickname here or there, but one that's stuck really well for a long time, is people still know me as Brute. And I can blame a bloke, if you're listening to this, Archie Waldrich was the one who coined this nickname. We were sitting around base squadron with a couple of blokes. There's probably about 4 of us, and we were talking, what are we going to do tonight? And they were suggesting all sorts of things, and I said, look, why don't we go to the movies? And they said, well, what's on? And I said, Camelot. It's a good movie. I've seen it before. It's a good movie, and Camelot's a good movie. And and Archie looked at me and he said, God, you're a real brute. And it stuck. The name stuck, And I think most people didn't know how it started or where it came from, but it did stick. Yeah.
So Steve Brute Rodgers.
Yeah, because I was known to be a bit sentimental, I suppose, and a bit, philosophical and that sort of thing. So,
All makes sense with the poetry.
yeah, and often nicknames tended to be opposite to what people were. Like the short person can be called Stretch, and one of my good friends is Rowdy, who is a quiet chap.
Yep.
Yeah, this is the sort of thing that happened. People often get nicknames that were the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, you know these people by their nicknames. You meet them by their nicknames. You've got no idea what their actual name is.
Yes, correct. And I know that I bumped into. I remember years ago I was at an Anzac Day parade and I was wearing the beret and I bumped into somebody else wearing the beret. And we looked at each other with suspicion because we know that there are people there who are pretenders.
Yep.
And when he told me his name, I knew it straight away. I said, yeah, okay, I remember you. I said, I'm Steve Rodgers. He looked at me and says, I don't know any Steve Rodgers. Yes, you do. No, Brute. Ah, Brute. Straight away. I just thought it was funny. Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. Now, I've also heard on the grapevine that there may be some memoirs coming out.
Those are not for publication. No, my memoirs. This is my daughter. She is a cheeky one. Those memoirs are strictly for family, pretty much, and they'll never be finished. They're something that I just chip away at and add to and subtract. There will never be a published end product. It'll be something that for my children, grandchildren. I wish that my parents, or any of my ancestors for that matter, had left more information about their lives, because it's only in later life that you start asking these questions and you realise that there's nobody left alive to tell you things. And so, yes, that's the reason I've done it. But in doing it, I found that I enjoyed doing it. I did it mainly initially for my children and grandchildren and so forth. But having done it, I found that I enjoyed doing it because I've had a good life, and reflecting on my life has brought me pleasure, So
yeah, absolutely. You've definitely lived a life that is less ordinary, we'll put it that way, than the normal person. I think it's important. Like my grandfather from my dad's side, he was in the Greek army. Mm-hmm. I still have his books from when he was in the Greek army that he got issued. I've got a family member. I know he doesn't like me talking about it, and I know very, very little about it, but he was a sniper in the Greek army, and he had a pretty harsh upbringing. Mm-hmm. And these are all stories that are going to be lost if they're not written down. I know, some of it's hard to talk about, and I get that, but I think it's really, really important to pass at least the core stuff down. These are stories that are going to be lost with time. Mm. And I think it's a great thing that, that you're writing these memoirs so your family, knows what you did, know what you've been through, and it's important. We need to learn from history, not forget it.
Mm. And I think it's not only about me, of course. It's when one does one's memoirs, you're also reflecting on others and the people that you knew and the way things were back then. And I think it's important for our children and grandchildren to have some appreciation of what life was like back then. It was so different. I mean, just the fact that, for example, you go to Vietnam for a year and you have no telephone calls, and just rely on letters. This is something that is quite novel to young people today who can YouTube or WhatsApp, people.
Absolutely.
Every day if they want to, 10 times a day.
Even emails, like even the guys that I know that have been to, overseas and served in Afghanistan and Iraq. There was, they had sat phones, they had video calls on laptops. It's different. It's very different now to what it was back in your days.
Oh, look, and if you go back further, of course, you're looking at 6 months for a letter to go from Australia to England.
Yep. So this is ships.
Yeah. This is something that has changed relatively rapidly to over a couple hundred years. It's a very rapid change. Communication.
Let's quickly brush on your life after your deployment, after you come back. And how long were you in the army once you come back from Vietnam?
couple of years. 3 years, 2 years. And I went to Point Cook. I was lucky enough to do Indonesian at Point Cook after coming back from Vietnam. In 1972, I was in Point Cook for a year studying Indonesian language, and then I went back to the regiment briefly with training squadron, working with Indonesian and Malaysian soldiers for a while. And then I got out of the army and became a school teacher. Basically went to uni, did a degree, did ed, and became a school teacher. And and having Indonesian was one of the greatest things, most useful things I got from being in the army. That it helped me to in my teaching and travel. And in fact, my wife is from Indonesia, and my life would have been so different if I hadn't done that Indonesian course. So, yeah, and that was how I became a school teacher for quite a number of years, and then I became a education manager, managing teacher and student exchanges between Northern Territory and Indonesia. So that Indonesian element was a significant part of the benefit I got from being in the army.
What life advice would you pass on to people that are thinking about joining the Defence Force?
That are thinking about joining the Defence Force?
Or for life in general, any wisdoms that you can pass down?
I think the most useful thing to me has been the 10 Ps or the 7 Ps. Maybe you can add a few more yourself, because it's to think ahead and to plan, prepare, which I didn't do when I was young, of course. I learnt that through the years, and it's a very good way of getting good results, And basically, I believe that given that you've got average intelligence and average ability, then you can pretty much achieve what you want if you prepare and plan and take the correct action.
I think a lot of people are lacking that confidence in themselves. I think people can achieve much more than they think they can if they apply themselves.
I think so. I think that in most cases people settle for less than what they could become or could have, because we tend to gravitate towards comfort and habit and not taking risks. Not that we necessarily need to take risks, but calculated risks. Yeah, calculated risks. Yeah.
Perfect, Steve. Well, I really, really want to thank you for trusting me to share your story and coming on and sharing your experiences. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be listening to this and are going to have a great insight into your life, a very interesting and a life lived less ordinary, let's call it that.
Well, I hope it's not too boring for people, and thank you for interviewing me, and I hope somebody gets some benefit from this and doesn't fall asleep halfway through.
I'm sure they will, mate. I'm sure they'll very much appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much again.
Thank you for tuning into the Priority Zero podcast. We greatly appreciate your dedicated listenership. If you are interested in being featured as a guest on our show, we welcome you to reach out to us through our official channels on Facebook or Instagram. Alternatively, you can contact us via email at contact@priorityzero.com.au. We value your support in helping us spread these compelling stories to a wider audience. Kindly consider liking and sharing these episodes, as it plays a crucial role in our mission to reach as many people as possible.